Welcome back, Chiefs fans. This is RGR Football. I'm Ryan, and this is me going rogue on your Kansas City Chiefs as they get ready for the regular season. And what has to happen for the regular season? You got to get down to your game day regular season roster. Cuts are coming right now. 53-man roster is coming at you. I'm going to walk you through everything in my version of it. This is not necessarily a prediction of what the Chiefs are going to do. This is what I think ought to be done. Bit of a hodgepodge, and it is different than what you saw or will see on Locked On Chiefs as Chris and I go through that. So if you're new to this channel, like, sub, and hit that bell notification so you know what comes next. Monday night's Q&A, we'll go over this more in depth, and I'll give you a glimpse at Dan's as well. But this is going to be my version of the Chiefs' 2021 53-man roster at initial cutdowns. This is what I see coming. So thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoy it.
All right, football fans, I'm glad that you're back, and I hope that you're looking forward to this as we get into my 53-man roster for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2021. This is going to take into account some of the things I think ought to happen and a lot of the things that I think will happen. We're going to get into that. I flipped a coin, and I'm going to start on the offense. So as we come up here, remember that there are always three specialists. You never get away from them, to tell you the truth. Winchester, Bucker, Townsend, not a problem. So we're working with 50 position slots, and that is where we're going to begin. It's going to be a challenge. I cannot lie to you. It is going to be a challenge, but the first position is really, really easy. And what you get is the magic QB position, obviously. Who is the number one in the top 100 as voted on by NFL players is Patrick Mahomes, your clear starter, and Chad Henne, your clear backup. Now, we'll talk about the practice squad coming up here in a little bit as we get through the rest of it, but this is very straightforward and very easy. There is no room for a third quarterback on the active roster right now because there are other fish to fry. And the first thing that you're going to see here as I bring up the offensive line is that there's only 9 of them. I've been leaning towards 10 the bulk of the offseason, but at this point, it feels like the 10th offensive lineman is not as valuable as either the 4th tight end or the 6th wide receiver, which you're going to see here in a minute. And so obviously you have your starters in Orlando Brown, Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Lucas Niang. Very simple. I know there was some speculation about whether Lucas Niang would maintain his starting position. I think that is definitely what is going to happen here, and I think it should. I think he's earned that. There's no reason to try to replace him. They didn't do it with Remmers in the final preseason game, but Remmers should be one of the primary backups. And this gets a little bit muddy here in terms of the positioning. Remmers can play right tackle. He can play left tackle. We know the varying degrees of success in those two positions. Wiley can do the same, particularly he can play on the right tackle side. But Wiley can play all 4 positions that aren't center here. And that is particularly where this becomes uber important. Because while he is possibly trade bait, I would not be surprised if the Chiefs have offers. I think right now, with the status of Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, as well as Kyle Long, I don't think there's any way that they can afford to let Wiley go right now. We'll see what happens in coming weeks. I expect, while you don't see Kyle Long on this list, I expect him to go on to the PUP, which means he would not be available until week 6, and then there would be a 3-week window for him to join the team on the active roster, effectively letting him heal and kicking it down the road as to where you fall out with your backups. I think at this point, Trey Smith has earned the starting job, so I don't expect that to be a change. It's going to be about what is your quality depth, and that's what this comes down to. So you have to keep Remmers. I don't think Prince Tega has played well enough to earn a spot on the 53, so he is not here. Allegretti, as we talked about Wiley being somebody that can play 4 positions, Remmers can play 4 positions as well. LDT can play either guard, but obviously not as versatile, but still a good amount of versatility, unless he is significantly injured, in which case he'll make the 53 and then immediately 53 on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday he will go to IR if that hand is further broken than we thought, or if there's any complication with his recovery. So keep that in mind. But as it stands right now, LDT can play both guard spots if he needs to. That has some value as well. And then Allegretti has to have a center backup, and Allegretti would be the guy that can play any of the interior 3. That's why he earns this over Austin Blythe. We'll talk about him coming up. But Blythe's injury, as well as the fact that he has not played near the snaps in the preseason, I don't think you can take a risk on the 53 with him there. There is a chance that in letting him go, he does sign elsewhere. He is a veteran. He will not have to clear waivers. He can do what he wants, but I do expect that there'll be an opportunity there. So I went with 9 offensive linemen. Then the running back situation is fairly straightforward. You guys have heard me talk about this before. Clyde is clearly the one. Darrell and Jerrick will fill in, I think, in what is kind of a situational role share behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And Mike Burton is the clear fullback. Yes, there will be a fullback. He will be on special teams. I look for Burton to actually play a lot of H as well in combination with Noah Gray and what he can do. We're going to see how that all falls out. But remember, this has been the preseason. They've not given away what their game plans are, what their wrinkles are. Very, very little. Of the few unique things that we've seen, like what I'm going to show you next, there's way more underneath the cover of this playbook that I expect to see soon. And when it comes to the skill positions players, that's where it begins. Over here, we do see I kept 4 tight ends. I think the play in the last preseason game preempted this. And right now I have Bell above Fortson because of the ability in short yardage situations. Now that 4 tight end set that we saw, I think that could be one of the wrinkles we see in the regular season, but it could also just be a diversion, knowing that they're going to play a lot of 3 tight ends. And that's why I think the number of trip tight end sets, I think, is going to grow back to maybe what it was when Ross Travis was on this roster. And in order to do that safely, you have to have a 4th. That really is the thinking, the old military term that 1 is none and 2 is 1, same kind of concept. You have to have a dedicated backup if you're going to do that consistently. So I did have all 4 of them making here. And this puts Hardman as the sole true slot, and I have Hill and Robinson, the guys that can run the X the most effectively. Don't pay attention to where these guys line up so much here on this depth chart. We all know that all of the wide receiver positions have to play all of the wide receiver positions in the offense. But this is just how it naturally breaks down to me. I think Robinson can do some Z things. Hill is obviously the primary Z. Hardman is obviously the primary slot. And I think Pringle, Fountain, and Kemp are the guys that I kept for the bigger role, for the on the line of scrimmage, dealing with press kind of guys. I think Fountain earned it on here, and quite frankly, the other backups I don't feel really pressed him very far. I think Kemp is a shoo-in because of his special teams prowess and the fact that he has played a good preseason, which we've seen from him before, but it didn't really allow him to be a regular on the 53. And I think Pringle is the guy that should be starting at the X, in my opinion. So that's how I list them here, with both 4 tight ends and 6 wide receivers. And that is because I think both of them in this offense are going to serve better than what you have in the versatility in the 4 backup offensive linemen. So going 9 O-line allowed us to do this. And what this does is give us 25 on the offense, which allows us to have 25 on the defense. We'll get to that in a second, but I do want to show you my ideas for the practice squad, and that is here. And I think you can get Blythe to the practice squad. I think he would have an interest in investing himself back onto a Super Bowl contender, and it would allow him to heal some. I think that's important. And I think they like Yasser Durant enough to bring him back to the practice squad pretty easily. I would venture Prestego-Wanaga. I'm not 100% on that, so I have left him off here for now. We hear that there's going to be a 16-man practice squad, so I'm leaving some room here for them to sign off of some other practice squads or possibly make one of these judgment calls on somebody like Prince Tega. But they definitely need pass catchers, and this is where I'm going to deviate from a lot of people. I think Cornell Powell has done enough clearly to stick with the team, but not on the 53. I think he has to go to the practice squad, and I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I think it gives him the time that he needs to grow and adjust to the offense. I think you have to have more than that, though, and I think Shepard and French are the other 2 guys that have earned a spot. I don't believe that Garrett Dieter has earned a spot. So I'm going to let that go and think that he is going to be released and not retained on the practice squad. That's what I would do. Will the Chiefs do that? That remains to be seen, but either way, Garrett Dieter is not making this 53. That brings us to the guys in the backfield, and I think Bichelle has done enough to become the 3rd. Maybe they upgrade that position, someone else from another roster. I think this is one of the spots where if they see somebody be released that they can grab, that they feel is an upgrade, they will definitely do that, and I think that is a possibility. And I really like what we saw from Derek Gore. I think he's earned his spot on the practice squad, and I think he is a guy that will replace Darwin Thompson. I think that is earned, and I think it's an interesting option for them should someone get hurt during the season to bring him up. I really like what he showed, particularly late in the preseason in Game 3. And that is going to bring us to the defense. As we get here, I'm excited about this unit, but I feel that there's more questions. That's just the hard truth of it. And so we'll start with the defensive line. This is pretty straightforward. And I leave these asterisks in here. You'll see why. Because the middle four, the tackles, are a done deal. There is no question here. Reed and Nottie will be your starters. Saunders and Wharton will be your backups. And I think that's all that they can afford to take to the 53. And I'm perfectly fine with that. They're going to need the depth on the edge position. And I do have Chris Jones listed as the edge along with Clark. And I know that this says right and left as though it was reversed. Remember, we're building the defense from that point of view. They will be your starters so long as Clark is healthy. I think Okafor is going to make this roster because he has the veteran experience, and I think the defense covets that. I think Spags in particular covets having someone who knows it. Maybe he's not as athletically capable as some of the other backups, but he knows it, and I think that's key. Mike Dana has earned himself. He started in the place of Clark in the preseason. He's earned himself to be the primary backup right now in this defense. The departure of Taco Charlton, while surprising, certainly lends itself to what you see here in Damone Harris, who I think got the better snaps in week 3 of the preseason, and Tim Ward, who had a good preseason against deep backups. That doesn't necessarily translate onto the game day field necessarily. So that is the problem. But I do have them carrying that many guys because I think they're going to have to rotate, and I think they have to be wary of injury above all because Clark is currently injured. I think Okafor could be injured at the drop of a dime. You have to have the depth there. And so that's what I've done here. We'll get to the practice squad, which will include Kando here coming up in a couple of minutes. That brings us to the second level. And there, this is pretty straightforward to me with your top 4. Hitchens, Gay, Bolton, Neiman. Very, very straight, very, very easy. I question whether in the base Neiman will be the starter for very long. Clearly, they're going to run the ball a lot or see the ball run a lot at them with the Cleveland Browns in week 1. So I do expect base there, and I do expect that to be Neiman. But I think Bolton's going to come on rather quickly and take over as the strong, most likely the strong anyway, in the base. But I have elected to depart from Dorian O'Daniel, a player that I have been strongly in the corner of since his arrival in Kansas City. And I just feel that when you look at this, you have Hitchens, Bolton, your middle linebacker of the now and your middle linebacker of the future. Neiman is also a middle linebacker. He calls the defense. He is most adept at this position. But he has to be a 2 deep behind the will because they're going to play nickel and dime so often that you really want to set this up as a nickel, and that's what I will be showing here, which I think is the starting 11. So the question becomes, the only will you have in the top 4 truly is Willie Gay. And to have that type of player, I don't think Dorian and Daniel can be a will should Willie Gay get hurt. And I think they'll do themselves a disservice if it's Hitchin, Bolton, and Neiman, because that's 3 middle linebackers. That's not a will. None of them have the athleticism to be a true will. And that's what brings me to Omari Cobb. And I know that Darius Harris has played in the past, week 17. I know he's played this season. Cobb got snaps in the last preseason game ahead of him and Dorian O'Daniel. And I think maybe that is not just that he's improved, Cobb has, but also that he fits as more of a will in terms of his fluidity and ability to run sideline to sideline. I don't think it's a drastic upgrade over O'Daniel and Harris, but I do think that it is there. And so right now, if this was me, I would take Cobb as my week 153. And if I had to adjust from them, I'm pretty certain that you can get not only Harris, but Dorian O'Daniel to the practice squad as well. We'll see that coming up here in a minute. And that brings us, quite frankly, to the back end of the defense where the RGR symbol here is got to be the leader of this defense, Tyrann Mathieu. And when you look at the secondary, it comes into Mathieu and Sorensen. And I do believe right now that Thornhill is the 3. I don't think that's a question. The question becomes who backs him up. And I know Armani Watts got a lot of snaps and made a nice play in the week 3. Right now, I think that that's almost a subterfuge. If it were me, I would take the gamble on getting Anderson up to speed, knowing that I think you can get Armani Watts to the practice squad. And if you need to flip those guys later, I think that you can. Now, a lot of people are going to be uncomfortable with that. And especially with the performance that Armani Watts has put in this preseason, this was the toughest decision for me on this exercise. I don't think the Chiefs are going to do this. I think the Chiefs will bring Armani Watts to the 53. But I would probably not do that. And as it comes down, that's just my personal instinct on this. We'll see what they do here coming up and who gets pilfered. If someone is out of range, gets signed to another team, then some of these things may actually change and may force some changes in strategy. And obviously we get to the premier position in the secondary, the cornerbacks. And I listed it this way because this is the way I expect them to line up the majority of the time. And that is Ward out here on the left-hand side, as you expect, with Baker backing him up. Sneed in the slot, even though I do designate Sneed very clearly as the cornerback number 1 on this roster. And Fenton would be his primary backup because Fenton, I believe, is capable of playing both. Fenton's actually capable of playing every position in the secondary, in my opinion. But I think in terms of usage, what the Chiefs see the most is his usage in the slot as the backup to Sneed in the nickel. Because they like what they've seen in Hughes. I think Hughes not only has sealed himself as the starter on the outside in the 3-corner group, in a 2-corner group, in other words, in the base defense that we might see week 1 against Cleveland, it would be Sneed on the outside. Again, CB1. Hughes is the outside guy in the nickel. And I think that they like Keys enough that they've seen him come along, that they want to keep him out there, and they don't want to take a risk of anyone picking him up. So I think that he does make the 53. And that's it. That is the 53. Now, if we take a look at the practice squad, this is what I would do. Clearly keep Watts. I would bring both Harris and O'Daniel back to the practice squad. They're both eligible, so why not? I would make sure that I get Kando over there. And I think either Edwards or Herring could be the guys. Herring, I believe, is on the NFI list, not the IR list. So I would expect that he can either be released and re-signed to the practice squad and then put on IR or whatever has to happen. I'm interested for his future, but I don't think he's a factor in 2021. And then I think I left Ward in here by mistake. Ward should not be over here. It's Kando over on this side. And I do like him on the right-hand side a little bit better myself. And then I think you have to keep Boodle. I think he's shown enough, not just at outside corner, but also in his safety snaps. I think he's got a future on this roster. Might not ever be a starter, but I think he's going to be a solid backup for the future, and I think they have to keep him and get him to the practice squad. Now, like I said, that leaves you some room to pick up some players from other rosters. I think that will happen as well. But this is what I think your 53 looks like on the defensive side. And this is what I think it looks like on the offensive side. This is going to be a lot of fun. We'll see just how close I am. And if the Chiefs chose to make any of the decisions that I made, they could very well depart from this. And I mentioned all of those, but this is what I would do. And I think it's pretty close in most cases to what the Chiefs will do. We're going to find out. Thank you guys for checking this one out. I'd like to know what you did and didn't like about my lineups here. Leave your comments down in the comments section. Please spread the word, like, sub, and hit that bell notification because we'll have Q&A tomorrow night where we'll go over all of this, answer all of your questions, as well as take a look at Dan's 53 as well. And then it's right on to hearing the announcements by Tuesday. That is the deadline. Wednesday, you're going to see some movement as well. So we'll have a lot to talk about this week. I hope that you guys are enjoying this. Welcome to the breakdown, and thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more.